Hello, welcome back to Sports News. Um, I'm your friendly host, Max. Not that that really matters. Um, this time I'm going to talk about craft. I mean, last time I was talking about work and like things that we really need and blah blah blah. But a part of that is in the last couple of years I've been quite interested in craft as opposed to art, really, because like I don't know, I've been a bit disdainful of art for a while. I'm not going to hide it. I went to art school, I kind of like went there and it was okay for a while. Like it was a good learning period and like you do go down some pretty interesting rabbit holes and shit, which I don't think are unvaluable. But I think that the art industry and the art community kind of maintain and uphold some values and practices that are not really useful to art itself and to the world in general, which is what I really care about. But I started getting into pottery, I think, like when I came back to New Zealand, which was 2 years ago now. But I've been thinking about craft for a while anyway. I was gonna do some like wood carving and shit, and like we were gonna do some jewelry and shit, and that kind of like petered out. But then I got into pottery because you can kind of just dig up your own clay and then make it and get it fired somewhere, or make a kiln if you really want to. And that was a really good step for me in terms of creative practice because like you're actually just making the thing and there's no bullshit. Like although the cool conceptual banter and discourse of art is cool and conceptual, and interesting and stimulating and like can lead to a lot of really good places mentally and emotionally sometimes. um, it's kind of superfluous and it's kind of just like a treadmill or whatever. Like it's this like self perpetuating material that kind of just exists off in the ether, and like until it's brought back down to earth and made into something physical, like turned back into energy or structure or whatever, it basically doesn't exist. So like although the like highest concepts might be being developed in art or philosophy, who cares? Because like we don't know anything about them unless that's all you're doing almost. But the thing that really was cool about craft is that it's universal. So like everyone can access it really. Though artists try and tell me that that's not true and that's just my concept about it. But like I mean, I don't know anyone who doesn't understand how to use a cup. And that's not a specific cultural thing. That is a universal cultural thing. So that is cool. And then any kind of variances and variations in form and style have a meaning within that context. So it's like already grounded within a context, which is cool. And also the practice of making it is kind of like, I mean, it's not intellectual, but the sense of meaning that it has is kind of deeper than that, and that's cool. I mean, like it's kind of meditative, and I've been into meditation for a while now, like whatever, 5 years or something, and like I just got less and less interested in intellectual stimulation because it's one dimensional kind of, and in a sense, the simpler something is, the more multi-dimensional it is. It's not specific. It's not like brought down into a specific line of reasoning or a specific culture or whatever necessarily. So it has more potential to access more things and more different types of meaning. So it's, if it's just a cup, it's just a cup, and like you can use it to drink from it. And if you can do that, it's a cup and it's a success and it's great. But also, I mean, whatever, this post is not to advertise my pottery, but like it's pretty wobbly. It's pretty like bungled or whatever. And that means something to people, even if it's that they hate it and they think it's ugly and like, why the fuck couldn't that potter just do a better job? Why is that person doing pottery if their stuff looks like shit or whatever? But I mean, some people like it and some people buy it, which means that it means something to them. And it means something to them because it's still a cup. But it's a cup, it's that cup, you know? It's not the cup that you can buy at the warehouse or whatever, Kmart. Even though those cups are alright, but they do feel a bit dead to me now. But I was also, my friend gave me some essays by Soya Tsuyanagi, and he basically just talks about folk crafts and about how the real beauty in them is that they're functional and durable and that they're like a real part of your life. It's not it's like a stable beauty and value. It's not reliant on, you know, some kind of knowledge or some kind of high culture or theory or whatever, and everyone needs it. And the more you're able to use it, the more meaning it has, because I mean, you can keep using it for a long time. It becomes it becomes your own relationship with it, which you can't necessarily do with art, because art is often so developed that you can't really have your own relationship with it, or if you tried to, it might just be shallow or something. This is not talking about all art, but you know, if you have to read an essay about it, it's not your own relationship with it. It's a really refined set of meanings kind of just being given to you by someone, and it's okay, but cool, whatever. But no one can necessarily have the same meaning that I have with my cup that I use every day, because it's only I'm doing it, and someone else doing it with the same thing, it's their sense of meaning and the rhythm of their day and shit is imprinted upon it or whatever. I mean, craft is something we need to kind of hold the meaning into communities or into societies or whatever. The objects that people use together kind of become ties to each other and shit. And whatever, postmodernism is cool, but if everything's exploded, then all of our relationships and understandings and senses of meaning are exploded, and that does put a lot of strain on people. And it's not necessary the kind of ecstasy of meaning in postmodernism and post-structuralism, deconstructionism, whatever. I get it. It's like a drug and it gets you high, but it's it's actually not the height of meaning once you really go there. You can't just keep taking the drug and going higher. What got you here won't get you there. So it's it's a height of meaning within finite meaning. But if you really want the dank meaning, you have to try and find the infinite meaning, which is kind of going in the opposite direction and kind of simplifying down and opening up and reducing. Not trying to encompass everything and get all the meanings or whatever and crowd them into a room or something. And I think the kind of systematicness or repetition and simplicity of crafts offers that to people. It's kind of if it's simple enough, it's kind of a blank slate on which meaning can be projected or something. But the more you kind of try and put meaning in there, the more it blocks out all the other implicit and invisible and possible meanings, because you're the meaning that you're putting in there is too loud or whatever. But when you repeat something and do it all the time or do it every day, it becomes like a lens through which you can see things, and whatever else you're kind of dealing with, it can be like brought into that space or something. Yeah, the simpler things are, the less kind of range of problems you're going to be having to deal with anyway. But I think we're having like a problem with that in the world, where like people are not grounded culturally, especially in the West, and like that is spreading to other countries like a disease. Like people have to like spend their whole, like the first, I don't know, third of their life like finding their identity or deciding what it's going to be, and then trying to be it, and then like, I don't know, trying to sustain it or whatever for the rest of their life. Like, we need to kind of have like a foundation to build on, which some cultures still do. You know, to like a context onto which you can like reflect yourself, because like people do have like a personality or whatever that they're, I don't know, kind of bringing with them into the world. You know, babies already have like a personality and shit. So like, you know, the more immediate the surface is to reflect on with that, the sooner you can kind of like find it and get on with it, you know. But like if every individual has to start from zero, then you like spend a huge amount of time just kind of coming to terms with what the fuck is really going on before you figure out what to do, you know, or like what there is to do, or what it even means to do anything. And like some people probably never figure that out. Like if you just like work in an office for your whole life, then like all your time is taken up. There's no space for you or whatever. But I think like, if more of that work and productivity was brought back down into like a tradition. It doesn't even really matter what it is, and there's like all different traditions going on in the world anyway. Then whatever else people feel the need to do and decide to do, they can do it from that starting point, having already kind of done that work or whatever. But also there's just things that we need, and we're like not doing the things that we need. We're not making the things that we really need. We're making all these things that we don't need, like phones with 4 cameras on them. And then there's like a lot of basic things that we do need. Like we do have like we've all got plates and knives and forks and shit and whatever, cool. But like if we just have what we need, like the finitude of it is a useful thing for the sense of meaning that we have as well. Like if we know what we need and when we've got it, then like the kind of mental labor of figuring that out is not part of the daily life. You know, like if you keep having to think like, fuck, but maybe I need the next iPhone, and like maybe I need a new TV, and maybe I need this kind of, I don't know, vegetables, or like I have to go to this party and like whatever. Like all those questions are about identity. Because like, I don't know, it's like we've lost the grounded sense of need. And now everyone has to like make up and like synthesize these new needs based on their identity. Whereas identity used to be more grounded in culture or whatever, probably. So that then like personality is more of like a simple thing that just comes out in the performance of that or whatever. But it's like we're like wasting a huge amount of energy, personally and collectively, to try and make all these things to satisfy or gratify like something we think we need in terms of like identity or whatever. And it's often expressed in terms of need, like with advertising and stuff. slash desire, but never really getting to that like internal sense of gratification, because like we're always trying to find more and more and more externally, but like that's not where we need to get it. Like everyone's got to like find their real sense of gratification internally, and like being swamped by all this stuff, both in terms of like work slash labor and objects, like the inane amount of objects we have in the world that are just nothing to do with anything. There's like webs of objects, just like completely blocks up the way to finding that kind of meaning. But if like all you've got to do is kind of simple tasks each day a bit, and then time to kind of explore a bit or whatever, there's like a lot more space for your identity or your personality to come out, or like to find the meaning in those things, because they're a lot more simple. You know, like it's more subtle, but therefore kind of like more profound sense of meaning and relationship with things. But like because I have the option of buying like 20 different kinds of packets of chips and not just a potato, it's confusing to be like, but am I like, you know, am I Eater or Bluebird or Copper Kettles or like what? Because like, but like I'm none of those things, you know, and I'm not the potato either. But it's like I can just have like a simple reflection with that potato or whatever. But like because there are so many options, it's like gives you the sense that you should be one or whatever. And it's like the same in the like, no, I'm not gonna go there. No, it's the same in like identity politics. Like there's like the options have been enumerated immensely in the last few years, maybe 10 years. But then it just like gives you like the idea that you should be one of LBTQI. I don't even know all the letters now because there are so many. But it's like, it's not about that. It's not about which one are you and there are these ones and we've got to keep making sure we include all the ones. Because it's not about the ones. Like, it's about, I mean, it's like, it's immaterial, like what you really are and what your real relationship with things are. So like you don't need the complicated shit to be external and to be like embodied in this finite thing, because then like we're gonna need, I mean you need an infinite amount of external objects to do that if you were going to try and do it that way. Like it's a lot more workable and flexible to just have like a simple option and then have the personal variation within that, and not be giving a shit about what all the possible variations are and shit. Like who really cares if you've got an iPhone or a Samsung or neither or whatever? I've got a Razor. Who gives a shit? And like, I mean personally, who gives a shit what your gender is or whatever? Like, it's not important. It doesn't change who you are to like shift around the things outside you as if they define you. But it can give you like reflections of who you are to engage with those external things. But I mean, like having a craft practice, I think, is a really healthy thing to do, to explore like a sense of expression of yourself and not be trying to like gain it from things that have been produced by someone else. But I do think we need to not be like flooded by external options, but just have like the flexibility within those things. Like if I'm someone who like makes cups, like I don't need to make like a million different things. I could just make cups. And if you wanted a bit bigger cup, I can make it like a bit bigger cup. Or I could make a tiny cup and it doesn't really matter. Plus also, the more people making stuff for themselves and for their communities, the less we need to mass produce things anyway. And like systematically, it's kind of like the more, I mean, it's like the more grounded in our communities the objects that surround us become. I mean, having like more like localized and specified things made just by us or whatever too makes it possible to have that kind of like expression and communication between people with objects. But if you're having to like choose from these cookie cutter mass produced things that anyone can have, it's kind of like you need to have like 1 billion of them to kind of like make up the right gradient for you or some shit. And it ends up just separating everyone from each other even more because they can't have that real sense of expression or whatever. And so they can't really engage with each other because they're not there. Like, you're not really there if you're expressing this other thing that you had to buy out of necessity from Kmart or whatever. But like, I made this cup and like, that's it, you know? Like, I made it. It doesn't matter what it is, because like, I did it and that's what it is. Like, there's no more explanation than that. And it can't ever lose that meaning either. But then also, I see people doing craft, and they're like trying to do it in this like calculated, perfect way, like trying to emulate what they see other people doing with craft, which is also fine. Like, it's great to just make things on your own, but it's also like, it's not really you making it. Like, it's not really like finding what you would really make. If you're just trying to make these like perfect round bowls and stuff, like, we've got perfect round bowls. If you need a perfect round bowl, like, it's easy to get it. And maybe there's people making that who that is, like, for who it is really their innate thing to make or whatever. But like, people go into creative things and crafts with this idea that they have to do it a certain way. Like, they've got this idea of what they're going to make, and it's like out there. And although like that is obviously chosen from within their personality and like what their preferences are and stuff, like, it's still ending up making like some kind of like externally decided object or whatever. But like, the more you just kind of like do it, like, and not think about it and just make it however it turns out, like, the more innate that expression is, and like the more real it is or whatever. Like, it's honest. And that's kind of like what craft is about for me anyway. Even though, I mean, like, I kind of came from an art background anyway, but whatever. But like, what's the point in doing it if it's just like what everyone else is doing, and if it's just like what you can get at the shop, like whatever range of shops, like the really like boutique-y shit and the Kmart shit. Like, I mean, there's still a point in making it. It's cool and it's fun, but it's like, it's kind of reduced down to just the making bit of it and not the like form and expression that it could be or whatever. Also, I was reading the Earthsea books by Ursula Le Guin, and like, in those books, the magic is not like showy or like fancy and shit. It's like, it's a craft, and it's like a deep thing that is shared through like tradition, and like it's shared from person to person. There is like an academy to learn it and shit, but like, people go there to really find like what their magic could be and shit, kind of. And in the third book that I'm on now, like, the magic is kind of like drying up, and like, people are like losing all their different kinds of crafts, like, not just the wizards, but like the people who like remember the songs and shit, and the people who like weave the silk and stuff are like losing the depth of their craft, and they're still kind of like trying to do it, but they can't like remember the meanings of it and stuff. And they're like, well, fuck it, who even cares about it anyway? You know, like, and people are like turning to like begging and peddling and drugs and like whatever. I mean, it's pretty similar to our society. But like, yeah, I thought that was like a pretty like deep representation of like what is going on. Like that, I mean, like bringing the magic into it as like a metaphor or whatever. And like the deep place that the tradition and craft comes from in the world is drying up because it's intertwined with the magic, and like the real kind of like deep gratification that comes from culture and engaging with culture. And so it's like there's no difference between like craft and magic. They all kind of come from the same source or whatever. And that's what it's like here too, you know, like the real like deep life gratification that can come from making or whatever you like end up doing. It can't be like fabricated, you know? And like trying to make something a certain way and trying to calculate what is going to be the best way and shit completely misses the point of what is the best way. Because if you're trying to calculate it and like decide it by weighing up external units or whatever and evaluating it that way, you're already so far away from the place where you find gratification and where you find what you need. Like what people need is not in the external object. Like the external object is a representation of it. So like making more and more objects and more diverse objects is missing the point of what people actually need. Like people need to be engaged in the making of the objects that surround them so that they're engaged in the process of producing meaning personally and communally. And like that's what I think craft is about. And that's kind of what I think like life is about. So if there's an opportunity for us to like go in a different direction as a result of this kind of crisis or whatever, change of pace and shit that's all happening with the lockdowns and stuff, I think it's extremely important for us to regain that sense of like local and community focused cultural production and relation, because I think that's the kind of foundation of either avoiding or not being so vulnerable to these kinds of crises as well. Like we need to be on top of what we are doing and being and generating collectively. And like the more wide scale and like, I don't know, math produced or math basis things are, the more out of hand they get, and then we end up with the like whatever, like wet markets or whatever, producing diseases and shit. And then people being in such poor physical condition that their bodies can't deal with those viruses. Like all the problems that we have come down to the same root in what we're doing and the acts that we produce collectively. And if we're not engaged with that, then we're completely vulnerable to those problems that we are directly or indirectly producing with those actions. So it, like, the crafts that we come into and engage in are part of that. And it's not just about making objects either. It's about, like, you know, cooking and raising children and shit. Like, those are crafts and, like, you know, deep traditional knowledges that we should have and that we don't have. And I'm going to do other vlogs about more specific things like that as well. But in general, I mean, like, craft is not like a specific set of actions or skill sets. It's like a cultural attitude towards how things are developed and operated. So, okay, yeah, cool, let's do that. Okay, bye.